Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yay, hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. We're here to do Kingsman: The Secret Service, a movie whose name I never get right. I think sometimes it's Kingsmen, but apparently it's Kingsman, and I never remember the Secret Service part. But yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I have the same thing. Like when I searched it on Disney Plus, I was like, wait, is this the sequel or the original? I can't remember.
Yeah. I do remember that the sequel has Golden Circle and it's Julianne Moore. So I did look for that because it basically looks like the same poster when you're like on Disney Plus. So I was just like, oh, okay, they only have the one movie. But yeah, here we are talking about a Matthew Vaughn movie. Probably after First Class.
Yep.
And Kick-Ass. Sorry, I forgot we already did Kick-Ass. I guess this is more Kick-Ass than First Class, which makes sense. It's the same writer, Mark Miller. It's his comic, I believe. Not that Mark wrote the movie. I think it's Matthew Vaughn and Jane Goldsman.
Yeah, Jane Goldman. Yeah.
Who wrote this script. And they made some changes to the comic. But basically, when I first saw this movie, I thought it was amazing. I was looking forward to revisiting this, especially after we had done all of these movies and had a different lens at looking at them. Because I was like, I know it's not going to stand up to the like social issues we've talked about, but am I still going to have fun with it? And I think I still had fun with it.
I still had a lot of fun with it. There was a lot of stuff there where I misremembered and was like, I remember like, oh, we're gonna watch this. I'm like, oh, you mean the whole movie where he just basically saves the world for sex? And I'm like, wait, that's not at all how this went.
No,
so I was so glad we rewatched it, and it was so much fun. And the thing I remember the most enjoying about this was genuinely having James Bond like moments, which is something that's been missing from the James Bond franchise. And I mean, with the gadgetry and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that I thought was just by far one of the most ridiculously fun things about this movie is the action sequences.
I was going to say, I hope you like the action because while I know it's very choppy, I was like, I just like the way it's shot. Like, I like the way, maybe the way it's shot isn't the right word. I like the way they edit it together. I really like the effect on it. It kind of looks a bit cartoonish, but it seems cool at the same time. I really like the way they shoot I said it again. I like the way they present the action in this movie. I like the way it's presented. And yeah, I think I was never a big James Bond fan. I came in with the Pierce Brosnan movies and I kept going with the Daniel Craig stuff. So I do know there's a difference, obviously. And like I've seen a lot of stuff from the Roger Moore era as well. So I get that it's like it's different vibes for different people. And I think the one thing I knew about this movie, even before I started digging into the trivia and stuff, was their whole goal was, what if we made spy movies, specifically James Bond, fun again? Because this is coming out of the Jason Bourne era. So it's like, like, let's make them fun again. And I feel like they accomplished that.
I feel like they accomplished that very, very well with like really good writing too. It's not like, oh, let's just make a fun spy movie for the sake of it. I mean, like, I think of that and I'd be like, okay, then we get Spy Kids. not that that's a bad movie. I mean, I enjoyed that when I was a kid, but like that's like fun and spy, right? But like this is adding a level of like, no, there's some really good writing and like really good earned moments in this that I really, really appreciated.
I agree with the earned moments. I think I think what's good about it is you go through the training process. So you
Mm,
I care about Roxy and Eggsy. I'm
yes.
like, oh, like, and this came from reading it. I didn't think of it that way, but Galahad is the pure of heart, Lancelot is the brave one, and so they're
Yes.
saying that like watching them go through this, you show Eggsy as pure of heart. That's why he's Galahad. And I kept thinking, why do they keep referencing her being afraid of heights? But it's like, yeah, she overcomes her fear of heights. She is the brave one. She's Lancelot. And I thought, like, to your point of writing, that's something they're ingraining, and there's a through line for these characters.
Mhm.
It's not just a bunch of words coming at you. It's like, well, yeah, like we want to show you the brave one of them and the pure one of them. And I
Mhm.
appreciated something like that, like something that you can think about after the fact.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that never connected to me until you just said it. And that's a layering of this movie that is so much better to me. Like I was just like, oh, okay, cool. It's like Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And
Mhm.
that iconography is cool, but then the symbolism, the visual symbolism of like, that's not a round table. So something's weird is going on here.
Mhm.
Something is a little bit suspect right from the beginning. And you're like, you don't know what it is. And because it's Michael Caine, you never really expect him to be
Yeah, like you're used
anything
to him
other than
from
wholesome. Yeah.
well, yeah, you're used to him as Alfred in that time period, like the
Yes.
time this movie comes out. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's Alfred, and he's just synonymous with nice British guy, which
Correct.
isn't. It's again good casting because that's not Michael
Mhm.
Caine for his career. It's Michael Caine for when we're watching that movie. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of what we think of him as.
Yeah, because those are the roles he was getting around that period of time. It was
Yeah,
just like that light-hearted, like more of a
not even
fatherly
lighthearted, but
figure.
like yeah, more fatherly figure
Mhm.
type. Like it
As
didn't
opposed
necessarily have to be
to,
like
yeah. Sorry.
villain. Like, and I
Mhm.
think that's the other thing is I forgot how much of a villain he is in this movie
I
because
agree.
I really like Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. I know he doesn't say it specifically, but like that he's obviously doing a take on Russell Simmons from Def Jam, and
Mhm.
like I find that to be so funny. And I
Yep.
know he said he was mostly going off the fact that he had a lisp when he started acting, and that like acting helped him overcome the lisp and everything like that.
Mhm.
But like, um, he's dressed like Russell Simmons, and I even thought like for some of them, like he's even sounds a bit like Ice-T, but it was like,
Yeah.
oh, like I like the performance because I think people think of Samuel Jackson as just the guy who yells motherfucker, or if he's not saying motherfucker, the intention is motherfucker, and
Mhm.
this is just like a fun thing he's doing where I can't even look at blood, I'll throw up, and I like McDonald's. I was just like, oh, like I've always thought he's a great actor, and I feel like a
Mhm.
role like this, especially during his Nick Fury run, is showing that like he's not the same in everything. Like
Yeah.
he's got this, he's got the Nick Fury stuff. I think in,
He's got.
in the next couple of years, you're going to see him in Hateful Eight. Like he's
Mhm.
doing really good work.
His range is just wild. Like
Mhm.
when people are like, oh yeah, he's the black guy in a movie, I'm like, you're
Yeah.
really discrediting and being like really racially insensitive when you say that.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
because he's like there in a lot of movies, he's cast in a lot of movies because he's a good actor.
And he's not really subservient in those roles, so it does come off as, oh,
Exactly.
he's just the angry black guy.
Yeah. And like in this one, he like the range in this, it's like he's having so much fun with this role.
Yeah.
And I love it so much because like I love when he does like really serious stuff because
Mhm.
there's a way that like his facial expression will just be like, yep, no one's messing around right now. Like everyone's got to pay attention to this right now. And then he'll do something like this, which I'm like, this is the most fun ever, where it's just like he has Gazelle like basically make the crime scene pretty. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
because I can't see blood, he'll
She's like,
throw
you
up.
can look now.
It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And
But
then
like, sorry, continue.
and then one of my favorite moments of his is like when he kills Galahad from the church scene, and he's just like, oh my god, I just killed a guy, and then like Gazelle's like saying like, but you just killed all those people, and then he's like rationalizing. He says, no, they killed each other.
Yeah.
It's like now I feel gross. I don't like this feeling. Oh, it was really
like
funny.
But before that is like he's got those funny moments, but then you also, for at least for me, take him deadly serious. Both scenes is with Colin Firth when he's like, there's that initial scene. He's like, yeah, I used to grow up and I always used to think like, oh, I would love to be James Bond. That's so cool. And Colin Firth is like, I actually think Bond is only as good as his villain. And I would grew up being like, I would like to be the villain. Like obviously they're making fun of each other, but just the way Samuel Jackson's like, what a pity we had to grow up. And it's just like, oh, like we're not fucking around anymore. Like,
Yeah,
he's on to you. What a pity we had to grow up, and you became the Bond, I became the villain. We're still gonna go at each other. And then obviously when he kills Colin Firth, it is like, oh, you think I'm gonna do this, 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 and just the way he's like, it ain't that kind of movie, and shoots him. I'm like, wow, good for him. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the sequel gets rid of that, but it's still like, if it was just this movie, you're like, yeah, he didn't fuck around. Like,
Yeah.
most of this movie, you're like, yeah, there's nothing you can do to stop this guy. Like, he isn't.
Yeah.
He's not monologuing really. He's having fun and getting done what he needs to get done.
Mhm. And I love the way he does things in the sense where he's just like, he's a villain I really appreciate, because like in every single thing that happens in this movie, he makes the right decision for a villain,
Yeah.
I will say. So like the idea is like, oh, okay, like I forget who the really entitled, privileged like guy that was training with the Kingsman, like when he's like, oh
like
yeah,
Charlie or something
like that. I call him Jackass. But anyways, the Jackass character, when he was like in that like the safety mountain thing, he was like, oh, screw this, I'm gonna accelerate, like screw 20-minute countdown, we're going down to 2 minutes. Like like that was like, oh, okay, this is a bad guy that actually gets it. He gets it. He's like, yeah, I'm not screwing around. I have this vision. I love what he said. Even like when he was like, when I was growing up, I had this thing, and then he's like, now we've realized that the world just screwed. It's fucked. It's like there's nothing we can do to bring it back. Like there has to be a massive overcorrection kind of thing. And the world culling event is basically it. It's a fascinating.
And I know that people might be like, oh, like Thanos, but I think his thing was, or at least what he vocalized to me was, look, either the Earth will get rid of this, or we get rid of the Earth or whatever. And so it's his way of controlling how this.
Yes.
It doesn't come off like he's trying to be benevolent. He is like, no, I need to control this so that I don't die. Like, because that is where I see this going. Is I will die. I don't want that. So I'm going, because throughout the movie you hear him saying like, look, I've got money. This isn't a money play. This is legitimately like, I don't care about a certain level of person, and they can go kill themselves so that we can have more room to grow. Like, or I can have more room to grow, not we. It's more like, no, like and like the way he talks to Obama in it as well, I was just like, no, just listen to me, shut up. Like, who cares about politicians promising things? Like, this is how it's gonna work. I'm in control, I know what I'm doing, and I'll make sure you don't die.
Yeah. And it's just one of the most interesting things, the way he premises it to like all the world leaders and all that kind of stuff. It's like, listen, you have red tape, I do not. I have all these kind of things, here's my plan, are you on board or not, kind of deal. And it's just like, the brilliance of this villain just cannot be understated in the way, like, he's just like, for someone like him to be engaging in like basic like British mannerism street fights, but where like in that dining room scene where they're like basically having like a fight through dialogue. It's a very British thing that they're doing. And I'm like, this is great. The fact that he can do this as well as be this character and do all these kind of things. Like, this is the greatest thing ever.
You mean like when he was like, oh, maybe we can have a Twinkie with this after dinner or whatever. And like, he just kept batting it back to him. Yeah.
Correct.
I thought that was great.
That was highly British. And the fact that it was so well executed, I'm like, this is fantastic. This is a villain that just gets everything. And just I guess I just really wanted to talk about Samuel Jackson because I agree. I think some people make fun of this performance, and watching it yesterday, I was like, no, like, I feel the same way about it. I really like him. I think he did a good job, especially in the context of what he was doing around that time. It was different. I think it's different. And knowing the visual cues and the lisp part of it, of that it's Russell Simmons, like, I also appreciate that, because I don't think that's something that people who come to this movie will exactly know.
they might just be like, oh, why's he doing that lisp? But I'm just like, no, that's very funny, because that's kind of how Russell Simmons is, like this guy who thinks he can control the world. But anyway, I really liked his performance. I know we started off with Michael Caine. We can get back to that, but that's kind of like the twist. And I do think that like it's good because the whole time you know that he is just like a street rat. I don't like that.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Michael Caine now. That character.
Yeah, he's very classist. He's Arthur.
So you're
throughout the whole movie, he's very classist and elitist, and it's very, very clear.
So you don't think like, oh, he's a villain. You're just like, oh, he's just an asshole that like is gonna give him a hard time.
Yeah, you're just extremely classist and British. That's what you are. And we were like, oh, okay, you're just the asshole that that Eggsy has to win over in terms of like, oh, okay, I now see the diamond in the rough kind of situation.
Yeah, you think it's that, and then you're like, oh no, like, and again, it's not like you're like, holy shit, how did this? It's just more like you're so focused on like, oh, when is Eggsy gonna win him over, or when is he gonna like reveal that he's like, I was just being hard on you because I saw the. And then you're like, oh no, he just is a bad person and is on board with Samuel Jackson's plan. Like he's like, Eggsy, you can be here if we have an agreement on like how things are gonna go. And you're like, yeah, kill him, man. Like I know he does the sleight of hand thing, but it's just like, yeah, fuck that guy. Get him out of here.
And I love throughout the whole movie they're layering the fact that like that is Eggsy's thing. Like he's always sleight of hand, always being like mischievous, always like the fact that he's like, oh my god, it's like, oh, what's this lighter thing? It's like, oh, that's a hand grenade. He's like, shut up. And he's like put it back. It's like they show you throughout the whole movie. It's like you can't take that thug aspect out of him. But and then even with I love what Colin Firth says in this Gallard's kind of thing, like the ability to become a gentleman or a kingsman is not based on the circumstances of one's birth. I'm like, that is amazing in itself. It's like it's a character kind of thing. It's how one carries himself. It's how comfortable someone is. That's a gentleman. I'm like, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, but they wouldn't let a black person in. So
they wouldn't, right? But
well, we'll see. I know that I don't know when this episode will come out. Doesn't matter when we're recording it, but it's before The Kingsman is out, which does have Jaimin Hansu. Right? Well, that's the prequel with Jaimin Hansu.
That's the prequel, right? Yeah.
And so I don't know what happened because they are definitely not letting black people in. If you're giving Eggsy a hard time, there's no chance they're giving a black person a chance.
That's very, very true. It's just one of those things where like, and that's, I'm glad you kind of pointed that out because I think that was kind of where I was going and I lost my train of thought. It's just the fact that it's like, okay, you can say that, but at the same time, like there's still a color thing here. There's still like very clearly wouldn't let people of color in this, even if they are gentlemen or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that movie will be like, oh, we just haven't seen the black people, but you see who's at the table when they do their like glasses round table thing.
Yeah, they're all
it's a bunch of guys that look the same. Like I thought two of them were the guy who just died, and I'm like, oh, it's just, and I know that's on purpose. That's it's not a mistake. That is, there's a very clear uniform to being a kingsman.
Yes. Skin color is part of it.
Yeah,
apparently
there's a very specific look to it, and I know that's on purpose. And then this movie was more dealing with class, so I would like I'd be interested to see what happens when they get away from class, because obviously in the sequel Halle Berry is an American kingsman, so they don't have the same hang up there.
Correct.
But the British one, we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, it's very fitting that is the British that is like that in that sense. We're like, hey, look at their history record book. You kind of can't get away from this, but yeah.
Michael Caine, I like that turn. It was something obviously I knew because I've seen the movie a couple times, but I just kind of forgot like how matter of factly they're like, well, obviously he's a bad guy, like because you're so, as I think we both said, like you're so focused on like, yeah, when's he gonna turn and like be like, hey kid, sorry for giving you such a hard time. Like, oh no, I guess that's the more realistic turn. No, I'm just a bad guy.
Yeah, and it was just one of those like you're basically waiting for that My Fair Lady or the Pretty Woman moment,
Mhm.
where and they even reference it in the movie where it's like, oh, you mean My Fair Lady? I'm like, and they call Fair's like, sure, let's go with that movie instead.
Well, he's
That's
just like, well,
really
you don't
funny.
really like that was surprising. Like I didn't see that coming.
It's like I didn't think you'd know that movie. That's
Yeah.
really funny. That was really funny, that moment. I loved it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think those two good, and I guess we haven't really got to eggs yet. I don't know if you want to save him
Oh,
for
by the
last.
way,
Mhm.
one of the things I completely forgot to mention on, because I didn't want to interrupt you when you were speaking about the Russell Simmons thing and his speech. I think it's ironic that like Colin the King's Speech,
Oh right, Colin Firth.
Colin Firth, and then you mentioned that. I'm like, that's kind of funny. I
That
know
was a
it's not like
stutter.
a
Yeah,
yeah. I know it's not the same thing at all, but I'm like, it's kind of funny how it's
speech
kind
impediment.
of
Yeah,
related. Yeah.
yeah. I think who else is in this movie? Yeah, I guess you just talk about Eggsy. I really like him because I didn't know him from anything, and I think this
Mm,
is a great like first role for Taron. I never remember if it's Egerton or Edgerton. I don't remember how to say his last name,
yeah,
but
I can't say it either, but I
yeah, but
agree. It's great.
I really like him as Eggsy. It
Yep.
was even good to see him in something like no, I don't remember the skiing movie where he went to the Olympics, and I was just like,
Oh, Eddie the Eagle.
yeah, I almost cried during that movie. I was like, man, this
That
guy's
was a
just
great movie.
yeah.
I
I
love that
just
movie.
really appreciate his performances, and
Yep.
obviously he was great in Rocket Man. But
Yeah, I was
like
about to say that was a great
another
movie too.
person with range,
Mhm.
like you think for sure, like oh he is Eggsy, like they just got a guy to do that,
Mhm.
but he's obviously got range, and I
Yep.
really appreciated that. Like this was the first way you see him.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't feel like he's trying to act, like he just
Mhm.
is the role,
Mhm.
which is great. Like and
Mhm.
uh I really did. I think they did a good job of like, especially when the mom is trying to like break into the room with his sister at the
Oh
end. Like,
God, yeah.
it obviously it's a world-ending type thing where everyone's killing
Mhm.
themselves, but because you're so, at least for me, dialed in with his home situation, like I thought that was, as you said, like an earned moment of like, holy fuck, man, like you gotta get there before she gets to the kid,
Yeah.
because the mom's not a bad person either. You're just kind of like, oh shit, like
Yeah, she's just a woman that's stuck in a domestic abusive partnership, or and that's really impacting her life and her ability to make decisions and all that
mhm.
kind of stuff, right? So it's you feel bad for her because like you feel really bad for her because she's obviously getting abused,
And you
and
don't want the death of her daughter on her hands either. You're like, fucking
exactly.
get her out of there.
Exactly, because it's just like throughout the whole movie, you're like, yeah, this woman has lost everything. She's just trying to hold it together. She's just trying to get through life the best that she possibly can through all the trauma that she's been through. And then, like, if she were to had like actually had her baby, I would be like, oh my god, that would have been
Yeah,
so
it would have been horrible anyway, but
horrible. Yeah,
I'm not trying to swerve away from what you're saying. I'm just agreeing with
right.
you wholeheartedly that like
Yeah.
it's another example of good writing that like
Mhm.
some people always complain about, like, oh, is it just one of those movies where they have to close a beam coming from the sky, which
Mm.
technically they are trying to turn off a beam that's waving over the, but that personal touch of like, look what's happening in his home, like it feels way more intimate than like,
Yeah.
and it's not a Russian family that you just met like in Justice League. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
like these are the stakes right now.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, I appreciated that because it's just like one of those moments where it's like obviously let's save the world, but like the
mhm,
added pressure, even he goes like, hey,
yeah,
Lancelot, like the
call
new
my mom.
Lancelot, Roxy, call my mom, tell her to do this is really really important to me, like make sure this is done and all this kind of stuff. It like there's mounting pressure on both sides. It feels like
Mhm,
everything's closing in on him, and I'm like that
mhm.
final scene where he just like goes off and has that awesome action sequence. I'm like, yes, this is so earned. I love
Yeah.
it. I don't even care if like the training doesn't even fully explain how he's able to like go ham on everyone. I don't even care. It's
I
like this is the
mean, the good
greatest.
news is they already say what his credentials are before that,
Yes,
and that the idea is he is good enough to be there. It's just they would have never let him because of where he
because of
was
class.
born.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and so it's because Harry is pushing this that he gets to be there.
Mhm.
Um, I just because I guess they were saying like they didn't even really like his dad when he was there. Like it's Harry that has to always stick up for him, being like, but he saved us. I'm like, nah, he's kind of shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was kind of shit anyway.
Yeah, because that was the truth. Like Michael Caine kept shit talking him even after he died. He's like, well, let's chuck this up for what it was, a failure. And then he's just like, he still goes back to the hood and still gets like he sees something. He like this is Galahad's like person that wants to see it.
I didn't know if he saw something in Eggsy or if he was just like, I got to make this up to him somehow.
Yeah, he does say I needed to make this up to you or something like that. But you're absolutely right. But the idea that he went to the hood in the first place to get his dad, the original Lancelot, was something that was just like, I think recognizing that like the character of Lancelot should be someone that's, it doesn't matter where they come from. Bravery, like it's even harder to be brave when you're being raised poor and in the projects and stuff like that too, right? I'm guessing that's where he's coming from, to have that same thing. But
I would imagine he was trying to diversify it. Again,
probably.
I know this movie is just focused on class, so I'm not going to knock it for being like, well, he could have been a bit more diverse. I get it. It's about class, and I know, especially, I've talked to people from London and around England of a certain age, not very young, that are like, yeah, it's all about class, and these are Black people talking that are convinced that it has nothing to do with race, and they're like, oh no, it's just about class, so I get that that's a very real thing if it's coming from a British filmmaker,
right,
using British characters. I get that they would kind of have that blind spot of just like, well, yeah, he's trying to diversify by getting different classes into the Kingsman.
Yeah, and I think blind spot is probably the best way to put it, because it's just like the idea of like, oh, class, like for the elite people, like thinking that class and race are not intertwined together. In like many
it's a
situations.
Conversation. Both things need to be brought up, but yes, I see how people try to compartmentalize and be like, no, this is a class issue.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, that's convenient because you know, and then the other argument being, well, Samuel L. Jackson has the most money in the entire movie, so what?
Yeah,
like,
he's
and
the
I'm
bad
like,
guy that has to get killed.
But I'm like,
they have to stop the Black person who has all the money. Yeah,
it's like, are you advocating for the world to go crazy and kill itself in a rage fest and flip tables? But
I really liked. I really like that they give you enough of Eggsy's home life that you're like, he is trying to prove something to himself, but there's the very real thing of like, he needs to get his mom into a better situation, because I even, for whatever reason this time around, really appreciated it. And he's like, I got a house, like you can come live with me, mom, like, and like the pride in his face when he says it, and like the very real like upset look he has when the boyfriend's like, no, stay with me, and I'm like, yeah, that really bothers, and like obviously it would, but it is like, I like that he already won and saved the world and did what he wanted to do with the Swedish princess, but it was like but it was like, this is the very real stakes for him of like, now how do I help my mom?
Yeah, he just wanted to be a good kid to begin with. I mean, like throughout the whole movie, he's just like, in the beginning he feels powerless, like even like the son of the guy that's dating his mom is just having a go at him in the bar and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's just like, you feel really, really bad for him, because you're like, this is a guy that's just down on his luck. His dad died when he was young. He's in the projects. It's like, you know, everyone sees him as a hood rat and all this kind of stuff. And like, people are picking on him, even in the hood rat thing. It's just like, he's not popular there.
He's at the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah, he's at the complete bottom of the chopping block of everything. So it's just like, you feel so bad for him. And then when he shows up in the bar and he's wearing the suit, you're like, yes. The only thing that I hate about that scene is like, you don't get the actual payoff with the fight.
I mean, you know how it's gonna go.
You know exactly how it goes, but it's just like, I'm just glad you see the beer glass hitting his head. You're like, yeah, okay, we know what's gonna happen, because obviously we're doing a throwback to the Colin Firth scene in the beginning. But like, man, that payoff would have been great to see, just because like, want to see people that hit women be hit dramatically. You know,
you do want to see him get the shit kicked out of him. Definitely.
Yes,
they build him up like that.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's going to be some people who defend it as like, well, it's gentlemanly to like just assume that's what's going to happen. We don't have to watch him debase himself like that. But it is.
Sure.
But you are. I mean, both of us seem like we're both like, nah, I still want to see him get beat
Yeah,
up.
I'm like,
But
no, I want to see some consequences. Like, I want to see some actual consequences for
I
these
think
bullshit actions.
the reason the scene still works for me is that the very real win isn't beating that person up, is that he has
Yes.
given his mom an opportunity to not be stuck with someone like that.
Correct. Because it's like, even because just because he's like got the house and all, he still needs his mom's consent, right? So that's why he's like, hey, I've got this, you can come with me if you want, kind of deal. Like, I get whatever.
It was a
everything
genuine
he can-
ask, like, would you
it's a
come with
great
me?
thing.
Yeah.
It's genuine, it's great, and it's just like, it's just, yeah, it's these are complicated discussions of why women don't leave these situations. You know, it's very, very tough, and it's not so easy. But
I'm
the way
assuming
he
that's
goes
his
about it is
kid
great.
as well.
Yeah,
Assume
yeah,
that the sister is
Mhm.
his kid.
yes.
So yeah, there's
No, the sister being the boyfriend's kid.
yeah,
Was I can't remember in the
because
first
the
scene.
timing
Was
wouldn't
there-
make sense that both Eggsy and that sister have the same father, because that kid is nowhere to be seen when he's
in the
a little
beginning,
kid.
because because I can't remember that in the beginning, because I just remember Eggsy.
Well, I
in the
mean, just it
beginning.
wouldn't make sense that she's still a baby and he's grown up, but she's still a baby. Like if she was there when the dad died, she would be older.
She'd be at least like 8 or 9 or 12
Yeah,
or
she
something
would
like
just be
that. Yeah,
older.
that makes
Like,
sense.
So
yeah,
I'm assuming
that's fair
to
assumption.
your
That's a
point-
half sister. Yeah,
to your point of
It's not so
all
easy
sorts
to
of
leave.
complicated reasons for why people aren't gone. One of them would be, I have a baby with this so
Mm-hmm.
realistically she'll never be rid of him, because
right. Yeah, unless
can make her
he's in
life very
prison or something like that.
complicated,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
he can be very difficult if he wants to, even if she was moved away. But I think the idea is, at least mentally, she can have some kind of separation from him, not
Correct.
having to live in the same area as him.
Yeah, and just generally getting her out of the hood in general, like that in itself is like a great offer to have anyone living in like the ghetto or anything like that, right? Just getting them out of the hood. So, I mean, everything about that scene has great payoff. Just him showing off in the suit and just like having the umbrella, you know what's about to happen. But yeah, I do visually want to see the shit get kicked out of that guy. I really do. I can't stand it when I see characters that beat women.
no good.
It's just not cool.
He's a shitty guy, and
Yes.
he deserved to be beat up on screen, but
Absolutely.
we know it's going to happen.
We know it. We know it did. We know it did with the beer glass and everything like that. So, cheers to that guy getting his teeth knocked out.
So I guess I want to talk about Merlin now, only because that
Mm.
leads to the whole you think Kingsman is so ruthless because they're like, well, we only gave one of you didn't have a parachute, or we
Right.
drowned someone, like you got to shoot your
Mm.
dog. I liked Merlin being there, kind of just like, you idiot, like obviously it's a blank. Oh no, I guess Galahad says, or Harry says that, but I liked Merlin in there as like, I feel like he was in the field, because that's the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
When Eggsy's dad dies, and then I would imagine he kind of took a step back so that he doesn't necessarily go out into the field.
Yeah,
The
that
only
was
reason-
confusing to me.
the
Like, that
only
was
reason-
confusing to me.
What I would imagine that took a toll on him, maybe, and he was kind of like, you know what, I can work my magic as Merlin,
Yeah.
like by creating the stuff for them and being
It-
the man in the chair, so to speak. And obviously,
Yeah.
the only reason he's in the field at the end is because there's only 3 of them left.
Yeah,
So,
out of
like,
sheer necessity.
so
And
he's
like,
like, yeah,
obviously
I
no
need
one
to
can
be
be trusted, right?
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing too, because like we're led to believe, yeah, there's well, I mean, if we're
In
going
that
off
city,
the King, if we're going through Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, there's 12 knights, right? In the Round Table?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So there would be at least, I guess, 10 other Kingsmen, but the idea is like, no, we can't trust them because they got to Arthur. So Arthur could have gotten to any of those guys. The only ones we could trust are basically the
new
rookie
recruits.
trainees. Yeah, the new recruits. I like that. And everything about that made sense. And Merlin, and obviously we could trust Merlin and all that kind of stuff, right? I love
mean,
Merlin in this.
Yeah.
Because
I think the big scene for me is when the parachute happens and
I
he's like,
agree.
oh, you think I'm expendable? And he's like, you have a problem with me, you come and say that in my ear. And then
Yes.
he's just like, get that chip off your shoulder, and pulls the
Mhm.
parachute. I appreciated that.
Yeah, I really, really appreciated that because it was just one of those things where it's just like, listen, this is all head games and all that kind of stuff. The one thing I will say though is that scene where that apparently that like tech person from the Berlin office was there posing as a recruit that died or something like that. I'm like, that was a pretty convincing death. Like
Yeah.
that was really convincing for them to do that. I'm like, I was shook up by that.
I mean, yeah, also realistically, she was just kind of sitting. I mean, she wasn't breathing, obviously, but no one went up to her. It wasn't like a regular movie where someone goes up to her, puts their feet like, oh, her pulse is gone. It's just like, he just said, you lose because she's dead. And everyone just, I guess, took his word for it.
Right.
But still the mind game stands, like, of like, that would really fuck with you if, and I get the point, is that like you still lose because you guys didn't work as a team to get everyone out of there. It was a pretty, everyone kind of just did their own thing.
Right.
But yeah, I like that all of that gets explained away. Like when he's like, well, you shot your dog, you're a monster. He's like, yeah, I shot my dog, and then it was blanks, and my dog died of like pancreatic cancer like 11 years later.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, but I think it is important that he didn't shoot because it's showing he's pure of heart. Like,
I agree with that.
I think it's perfectly, I mean, I do in the moment, I'm like, I just shoot it, it's a blank, like, because I know that from seeing it the first time. But I do think it's important that it's like, no, why would he do that? Like he took some form of an oath to like take this dog into his care. So like, why would you? It makes sense. Like, why would you then just turn on the thing that you pledged allegiance to and shoot it?
But it's also the idea of like, I really, really like those moments where it's like Michael Caine's like, now shoot him, and then he just refuses to do so, and I'm like, okay, that's great, because let's remember the Nuremberg trials and stuff like that. Just because you were ordered to do something doesn't mean you should do it. And that's a war crime thing. Like, no, don't kill these people just because someone told you to do it. Like, so he's doing that, and like a brilliant display of like purity of heart. Like, and that's adding a level of like everything onto, he's only going to kill people that deserve it, or like are threatening him or whatever. He's going to protect the innocent. Like, I love that display of his character in that moment.
And the only I guess muddled message is that their test before that is, are you going to tell on us if someone's like, if your life is in danger?
Yeah, are you going to?
And so it's like, okay, so the one test is, are you loyal? But this test is also a test of loyalty, because it's like, would you turn on your own just because we told you to?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it seems like those two tests are at odds.
Those two tests are at odds, but they're basically.
But I know that
odds,
you need that.
You
need that type of person who can compartmentalize like that. It's like, that's how they are able to function. And
because
that's why he wouldn't have been picked in any normal circumstances. It's like, well, if you're gonna let those feelings get in the way, you're not gonna last in the field. Yeah,
but it's also like, they're testing loyalty, and they're testing loyalty to what? And they're testing the biggest loyalty to the Kingsman Secret Service itself, right? And I'm like, that it perfectly makes sense. It does seem at odds to each other, but I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, pledge loyalty to the organization, sure, whatever. But that scene was great in the sense where I loved how that scene plays out, in the sense where the train goes over, and then immediately you see the person that chose that person to go in. And so, and then for Michael Caine to look at the Charlie. Jerk asshole guy, Charlie, to be like, you disgust me, get out of my sight, go home, and all that kind of stuff, because he sold him out.
And I'm like, fuck you, my dad's gonna hear about this.
Yeah, he's like, he does the most privileged, entitled thing ever. He's like, my dad's gonna sue you.
Yeah. As if his dad would have any control over
as if you were allowed to say anything about the training you just went through too.
Exactly.
Like, fuck, like, this guy's entitlement is just wildly off the charts.
I am kind of bummed that he's in the second one too. I'm like, I just thought we were done with him.
Yeah, so bummed. When I completely forgot he's in the end. in the bunker thing.
Yeah, without any. I guess he still made it out alive, so I guess his head didn't explode.
Yeah.
Which is good for him. But it's like, I feel like if my head didn't explode, I'd be like, wait, what? So that means I wouldn't have been safe when you turned on the thing.
Yeah, it's almost like this situation, this double-edged sword is like, wait, hold on.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Like,
I mean, he would obviously remember if they put it, like, you have a big scar on, so like it's not like he's like, hey, how come I didn't get to take the pill? Like, you would remember if he went through surgery. So maybe that's already something he made peace with. But I'm just like, you're there, but you're not safe. Like,
right?
Yeah, like it's interesting. But yeah,
that is definitely one of those things that's really, really funny. Like, I like the fact with Samuel L. Jackson's like, hell no, you think I'd take one of those myself? Yeah. No, I'm like, what? I'm like, this is the funniest thing in the world.
But that's why I like him as a villain. It's like everything he does makes sense. Like, even when he's like making it his handprint that turns it on and off. It's like, yeah, now no one can just turn a switch. And like, you watch him go through it and he's like, oh, this hurts. And she's like, because I was like, you wanted it this way and it makes the most sense. And I'm like, yeah, good for you, Valentine. Like, you just know what you're doing.
Yeah. Everything he does from a villain standpoint makes so much sense to me. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, this is so perfect.
Should we talk about Gazelle?
Yes.
I know people would be like, why didn't they get someone? But I looked at the trivia, and they did have two different people. They were both athletes. One of them was Oscar Pistorius, though, so that kind of had to not be a thing anymore because he's a killer. And the other person, because this movie got delayed, she wouldn't have been able to compete in the Olympics, so she dropped out. I mean, obviously there isn't just two people with legs like that. I don't
prosthetics.
Prosthetics. But it does. I did appreciate at least seeing that they had hired two different people. Like, it wasn't like, oh, the one famous person can't do it. Well, then whatever. It was like they went through two different things, and I guess at that point I was like, all right, we just need to get someone in. And she was someone who is a dancer and I guess could do the choreography.
Right. And you're speaking to this from the perspective of like having representation of like actual people with different abilities on screen. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So they did cast two people. They were both athletes. I can't remember the woman's name, but Oscar Pistorius is pretty famous and would not be a good look to have in the movie. Right. So I think, that was just interesting. But once you get past that, and I'm not saying it's okay because they asked two people and they couldn't do it, so obviously third time's a charm. I'm just saying it looks like an effort was made. Once I get over that it is still an able-bodied, or I don't know if that's the right term, but someone without prosthetics doing the role. I just enjoy her interactions with Samuel Jackson. That, like, obviously they like each other, they care for each other. He doesn't try and throw her under the bus by the end. Like, they're pretty much with each other till the end. I love the relationship that they have, and I think, and I'm not stating that I am politically correct in this or I know whatever it is I'm doing, but I do work with a lot of the Paralympic, the Team Canada's Paralympic team, and they do say able-bodied and disabled-bodied. I think that is the term that has been used at the organizational level. So I'm not too sure, but if anyone is more knowledgeable and more read on this, please tweet at us, let us know, and all that kind of stuff. We don't mean to be politically incorrect or dismissive or anything like that, but you're right. In these situations are very, very tough because it's having an actress that has this specific disability almost makes it seem like a Peter Dinklage situation. You know what I mean? It's like the idea of like how he said in his early acting career, how there's so many positions that were like for a little person here, a little person here, and it didn't matter. It was just like, we just need a little person here, and he refused to take those roles. Like, I don't know if that bleeds into the same kind of political or the same kind of tones of the same thing. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, well, if we have someone that does actually have this prosthetic and is this actress and can play this role or whatever, are we choosing this person just because of those things? Or like, it's a difficult discussion altogether. And I've heard these discussions be done at the Paralympic level too. It's just like,
Well, because there are some athletes that like, if we had that, it's like, are we only considered for that because of our what horrifically happened to us? Right. You know, it's like it's not an easy discussion whatsoever to have.
No.
So I don't know if they did their best. I don't know, but I know that there was an effort made, and I'm glad that you highlighted it. Because this is something that,
and I guess the idea is, why is that important? And I think that just comes back to, they wanted to do another James Bond homage, and that is kind of a thing for James Bond henchmen, that they have some form of if it's like a jaw, like a metal jaw or something like that, there's some part of their body that is prosthetic.
Yeah, something that has been enhanced or something like that.
Yeah, and in this case, it's prosthetic legs with blades,
right.
Which makes for interesting fight scenes.
Crazy fight scenes. The craziest fight scenes. It's nuts.
But that's not all she is. She is the second in command.
Yeah,
she's got, and I don't know what the breakdown of how much dialogue she has, but I think what's important is she is important to Valentine. He doesn't just see her as the muscle. She is there making decisions with him. She's there all the time. And I especially like at the end when he's like, no, kill, like he's talking to Gazelle while she's fighting eggs, and he's like, no, kill him. He killed all of our friends. And it's like, like he's someone who cares about the people he's working with. He's not just like he's not just using her to throw her under the bus. It's like, he wants her to win this for their friends.
Yeah, it's basically like he's in a situation where it's like, hey, the world's gonna end. It's a matter of time. Let's save my friends, or the people that are like, and the friends of my friends, which are high class elite people, and give chips to those that can serve us, like the henchmen and the utility people and all that kind of stuff, right? So that they could still live their lavish life even after everyone's dead. So like that's what his goal is, basically. It's just like, hey, let's have a VIP end of the world party and then like rebuild society after that. Sure, but like he genuinely cares about her in the sense, and she genuinely cares about him in the sense where like, and I keep mentioning that church scene, the idea of like that dialogue, like afterwards, is like, oh my God, I just killed a man. That was gross. And then she's genuinely consoling him and pointing out different things. Like, you just killed that entire church. Like, no, they killed each other. And like, she's there, like that discussion, that back and forth between them. I'm like, no, there's a friendship there. It's not just like, I'm hiring you because you're the best at this. No, there's a friendship there. And I like that.
Yeah, they care about each other. I really appreciate that. And it's not like she's sexualized or anything like that. I there is moments where like they embrace each other, but it does feel like, yeah, they're close. They're friends. You're not like, oh, he's just got her around because he likes the way she looks or whatever.
Yeah. It's not like a Michael Bay situation where it's like, oh, the people that are working with me are going to be hot.
Or like in James Bond movies where like it's the sexy woman that gets thrown out there to entice the hero, and it's like, got you, Mr. Bond. Yeah, like she's someone who works with Valentine.
It's true. Yeah. This movie does so many things so well. It really does. But one thing I will say though is, watching this movie, the entire time I thought this was a better video game adaptation. Like, you know what I mean? Like the style of the way this movie was done was like this. It seemed less comic book and more video game movie for some reason. And I think it's purely because of the action sequences. I'm like, because of the video games I play, I'm like, I've definitely seen action sequences exactly like that in the video game. So I don't know if it's that I'm just projecting because of that, but it felt like, especially during those fight scenes, I'm like, this feels like a video game now. It feels like, especially when he goes, the POV aim down sights kind of shot, I'm like, that kind of felt like Doom a little bit. But I'm glad it was just like that one shot and it was over. It wasn't the final scene gimmick thing where it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna feel like you're really in the video game. I'm like, well, we play the video game for that. You can't watch a movie and feel like you're in the video game. We play a video game to feel like we're in the video game. So I'm glad it didn't overdo that one shot where he did the aim down sight thing. But overall, great. So much fun. And
No,
even then, the head explosion firework thing,
I really like the way it looked.
hilarious. So much fun.
And even like how Merlin, who you think has seen it all, is kind of like, look at this is great.
Yeah, that was so much fun to me, how much Merlin was enjoying it.
Yeah, I really liked that. And I also like when at the end he's got his gun and he helps Eggsy, and Eggsy's like, all right, we'll give you the gun. He's like, no,
That's
this is
mine.
I'll show you yours.
That was so much fun to me.
Because I was like, yeah, like he's gonna need to protect himself. He's like, no. I'm not an idiot.
I love that so much. This is mine. Here's yours. That was great.
Yeah, I think we didn't really talk about Roxy, but I also appreciated that wasn't a like, oh, that's his love interest.
Yes.
Like the Swedish thing really does feel like just a James Bond joke of like, oh yeah, and he needs to get with a woman, I guess. And it wasn't like the only other good guy female character, it was like,
yes,
that was someone who just he had a good relationship with. They supported each other through this whole experience, and at no point are you like, oh, I can't wait to get into her pants. It's just like,
yeah,
you feel like they genuinely connected, and I liked that. And again, I like that she's got her own thing she's dealing with. It might not feel she's not the lead, but like it's not like she's working to like just be there for Eggsy. Like she's got her own thing going on. Like she's passing the test, she's dealing with her issues with heights, she gets to shoot the missile off and do something. I mean, she does help Eggsy's mom, but it's like she has her own mission she's going on, and she's the one that actually becomes a Kingsman.
Yeah, Roxy to me is such a great character. Like that platonic relationship that they both have is fantastic to me. And I read it from the perspective of like Roxy, if Roxy wants to win, she wants to win because she is the proven best. And if she can help other people to get to their A game and she still wins, then she absolutely is the best. I think that's her mentality going into it. And I respect it so much. And I think that's great. And I wish more competitors were like that. Seriously, I genuinely do. I'm like, hey, I don't want to win if you feel sick. Like if you're having a bad day or whatever, I don't want to win against that. I want to win against Jordan in his prime. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing that you want to do. And I got that from this. And I love the fact that none of it was sexualized whatsoever. Even in the club
never feel
scene,
like they were hitting on each other. Yeah, like they were colleagues that had the same objective, like hit on this woman. And it wasn't like,
sorry, in that club scene, it's very, very, very easily like she looks good in that club scene. She looks good, like all dressed up and like all that kind of stuff. And it's one of those moments of very easily that a director could have been like, okay, let's pick this camera angle that like has him check her out differently and sexualizes her subtly. But none of that was done, and I appreciate that so much because it was just the both of them just running alongside each other, not playing into gender norms or anything different like that. It was just like beautiful. Two people just going and getting their thing.
Yeah, and they didn't make her try to hit on a man. It was like, here's the target. Whoever can do it can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, we realized that also that wasn't actually the point of that mission, but still, it's not like they were like, Roxy's a girl, let's give her a guy to hit on.
Right. That was really, really interesting to me. I'm like, yeah, that was a great assignment for the three of them. It obviously being a misdirect, but I'm like, that was just a really, really good assignment to be like, okay, show your flexibility here. You know what I mean? It was great. I liked it.
It is a shame that she dies in the second one.
Yes,
I always thought that was a bad idea.
Yeah,
it really did feel like, well, we don't know what to do with a girl he's not going to try and have sex with.
Yeah, and that really does suck. I'm just like, no, why can't they just kind of like just run alongside and just do shit together? I mean, like it's the second one Merlin dies.
It's not like they were like, oh, there's too many good guys. Like it's like him and Merlin by the end of it again.
Yeah.
So it's like you could have kept you could have kept Roxy, because even I know we're spoiling the second one, but even if you were to look at the trailers and be like, well, he's got Channing Tatum, it's like, no, he doesn't. Channing Tatum is literally put on ice within the first 3 minutes of that movie.
Yeah,
it's like you weren't hurting. Like it wasn't like you were like, oh, how are we gonna like juggle all these good guys? It's like you killed off or put on ice all of the good guys.
Yeah, there was no real need to kill her off. I thought if they did kill her off, I would have loved for them to do it in the third one where there's more of an emotional payoff, where
I
we're
just don't like
really
killing off
attached to that
women
character.
for emotional payoff.
I agree. I don't like
I
killing
don't.
off any
There's no
character
need
for
to pay.
emotional
There's
payoff.
no need to kill her off.
There is
You
no
already
need.
have
I absolutely
Merlin,
agree.
which is the emotional payoff.
Yeah, that death in the sequel is that itself is gut wrenching, especially the way he goes. Because he's singing John Denver, right? Country Roads.
Road,
yeah, I remember that so vividly. But yeah, I really didn't like the fact that they killed her in the sequel. And what are you saying? Why are you apologizing for spoiling things? Our podcast name is Spoiled Rotten, bro.
Yeah, no one came here for Golden Circle. We're not gonna cover it. So there's that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I just that is where her character ends, and it's like, and I know they live in a world where they can bring anyone back to life, which the second movie makes very clear.
Yeah,
it's just that one really felt like meh, not really much she can do if he's not going to be trying to get with her.
Yeah, and that's disappointing. I mean, wouldn't it? I personally thought it would be cool if, like, hey, what if she ultimately became the new Merlin or Arthur or whatever, and they just made a new Kingsman like thing and just like made it awesome instead of
they
could have
just been like, oh, British. I got assigned somewhere else if they didn't want to work with her. The killing her off seemed like very ridiculous.
I agree. Especially if
my own thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Especially if the point of the second one was to show like, hey, there's more Kingsman services all across the world. It's like, yeah, you could have just shipped her off to somewhere else, give her a different assignment. Be like, hey, she's doing an assignment in Germany right now. Yeah. She's not available for this one. Like, you don't need to kill her off. Like,
yeah,
I agree.
But yeah, that's Kingsman. I don't know. Is there?
You know, we have managed to not talk that much about Colin Firth in this movie for some reason.
Yeah, we got to talk about Harry.
Yeah, we haven't talked much about him.
Yeah.
I'm always a big fan of Colin Firth. I think he does.
This is another one where you're like, look at the range on this guy. Like, you believe him in those fight scenes. It doesn't look awkward. Like they had to cut around his ability to fight. I mean, only because, or maybe that is what I like about the action, is that it is cut in a way where you're like, yeah, that just looks like how they fight in this universe, or like that's how we display fights. It doesn't feel like they're compensating. And I know he trained for like 6 months to do this. So
yeah.
And it says he did 80% of his own stunts. So yeah, it is him a lot of the time, or a lot more of the time than most actors.
Respect to that. That church scene by far is one of the coolest things ever. And I think the thing that starts off the fight scene where he's trying to leave and he's like, and the woman's like, where are you trying to go?
Whore that has a black Jewish boyfriend. Yeah,
accountant or something like that. And I like, that was just so funny to me, the way he just like launched into that thing. I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm the son of a Catholic whore. So I don't know. It's hilarious to me, with a black Jewish boyfriend.
Yeah, I think what was good about that too is that like he has a brief moment of like, that felt horrible. Like, I wasn't in control. Look at what I've done. But then he dies like immediately. So it's not like I can be like, well, the movie didn't even deal. It's like, well, no, he just dies after that.
Because that
he didn't really have time to like deal with it.
Because when he gets out of that church scene, he's genuine, like the way he's acting, he's genuinely like, what did you do to me? And all this kind of stuff. I had no control. I killed all those people. What did you do? He's generally, he's shook. He shook up real bad. And like, that's a great scene. I love that scene.
And yeah, and the idea that Eggsy has to watch his father figure type die.
Yeah.
I don't know if I guess obviously he had spent enough time with him to feel away, because he gets blown up earlier in the movie. I think that might be my one negative for these movies, is they really make you think that Colin Firth is going to die like a lot.
Yeah. Like, they take him out of action a lot of times.
Yeah, they took him out twice in this. I mean, one is way more final, but then he comes back in the second one as well, and you're basically redoing what he did in the first one, and he has the beard and everything like that. But yeah, I think again, if you talk about earned moments, him reacting to watching Harry get shot, especially sitting in Harry's room with all the like, when he said like, hey, here are all the headlines from like when like big things were happening, but I was off saving the day.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, that's not going to happen anymore. And I know they're trying to set him up as the next Harry, but it does feel like also that you kind of wanted him to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
Especially, they set that up early on that like he's had all these days where like he was saving the world, but obviously what are people talking about? Like the
Yeah.
royal family or like a soccer game someone won.
Yeah, I was hoping for his character to be like, and that he would like basically quit and retire at the end of it.
Yeah,
and
like
be
the
like,
Men in
hey,
Black thing of
exactly.
like, oh, I found my replacement. I'm out.
Yeah, and like I thought that's generally where he's going with everything. And when he dies, you're just like, oh, but you're so close to retirement. At least I was projecting like, oh, he must be retiring.
Yeah. I mean, this time around, I didn't care that much because I'm like, well, I know he's coming back. But yeah, the first time, especially the way they did the trailers, I'm like, what the fuck? I haven't even seen all of his scenes from the trailers yet. So it really worked. I was just like, oh, I think he's just actually dead now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I genuinely thought he was dead. I'm like, oh my God, this movie's got guts to like just kill off so many important characters in it. I love it.
I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, because at that point was Arthur already dead? Arthur was dead, right? Or no?
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but that would have factored into it because like if Arthur had died already and he's still alive and he's before the church scene, you're thinking like, well, it's either Merlin or like him that's going to be the next Arthur or something like that.
I think
right?
Arthur's still alive because then Harry dies and he has to go in to talk about it with Arthur. Right,
because he's toasting his death. Yeah. Like they're talking about like this is the brandy
at the beginning.
Yeah. This is the brandy we only drink when a Kingsman dies and something like that. And he does a switch thing. Yeah. That was great.
But yeah, I think it's cool because you don't really think of Colin Firth as an action guy, and it doesn't detract in this movie. It works really well, so I think that's really strong.
Yep.
And I feel like he's hiding something. Like there is some kind of like mystery to Harry. Like you don't fully know him, which is interesting. It sucks that he dies, and then I think you get to learn way more about him in the second one. But the idea that just what you need to know for this movie is that he feels bad about Eggsy's dad, and he's trying to make it right.
And because it was his mistake, he says that multiple times. Yes. He was like, it was something that I overlooked.
Because he said, "Damn it, how did I miss that?" And
like how did he not like scan his body for like an internal bomb or something like that? It's just like, okay, I can see how that would be like. Yeah, that was a very, very stupid mistake if you're working as a Secret Service person like that, to not like check your corners or like something like that, like something very, very careless that a rookie would do. I'm sure, like, I understand why that would carry around in the back of his head throughout his whole life and be like, no, I have to make this right.
Yeah, I think that's Harry, because I really do feel like that he's a bit too guarded for me to do like a deep dive. It's just like, it's nice that they took a chance like that to kill him off in this movie before you would think like he doesn't get to do the like sacrifice for Eggsy. Really, it's more like he's really low at this point, he's shook up, and then boom, you take him out. And he just wants to make things right with Eggsy's father by, I guess, help get Eggsy out of the downward spiral he's in by like hanging out and picking fights at bars instead of putting his skills to use. Yeah,
because did he ever say what he was doing before he became a Kingsman too? Like, did he ever say that he was originally like from the hood too, and then someone recognized his? Okay, like, because I would have been like, oh, that would be a cool kind of revelation of a character moment, but judging by his house,
I think what they were saying is that Arthur, so Michael Caine starts using a Cockney accent while he's dying, so it might be that he actually was low status before.
Oh, you know what? I never actually picked that up.
Yeah, the way he dies is not upper class. Like it's like, oh, you fucking bird. So like, I think they're saying that if anyone was lower class than Arthur out of them.
Interesting, because I don't know the subtleties of those UK accents and what they mean in terms of class and all that kind of stuff, right? I didn't know that
Cockney is
Cockney
usually
meant more.
associated with working class because that's the whole
Mm.
Cockney rhyming thing, so they can
Ah,
speak to each other and get things across without their bosses knowing and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that is an interesting thing that I feel like doesn't often get talked about, which is when people who were on the outside get in and become gatekeepers.
oh God, yeah.
Yeah, so that could be what that Arthur thing was that he was
Interesting.
in and he's like, well, I'm in and now I need to uphold this system that was going to keep me out anyway.
Yeah, you know, it's really messed up. Some of those things that happen sometimes, like the mentality is like, well, if I did it, why can't you? Like, I'm just the
Even though
system.
I'm actively helping
Yeah,
to keep you out of it. Yeah.
exactly. Like I've seen so many examples of that. It's like, well, if I was able to do this, why can't you? I'm like, well, let's put it this way. If you were able to make it, why aren't you making it easier for other people like yourself to do this, as opposed to making it harder for people that
Being like, oh, I can't
are
give
like
away
you?
that secret or
Exactly.
yeah.
It's like a fundamental betrayal of everything. It's like, hey, I worked so hard to craft this persona. Don't fuck it all up by telling people the truth. Um, and I'm just, that's such a sad thing that people are so ashamed of where they came from and can't celebrate how, where they are. Because like it's what Colin Firth says, like it's not the circumstance of your birth, right? Even though that's very layered with a lot of privilege here,
Yes.
but it's one of those things that it's just like, yeah, it is. There's a lot to say about the decisions that people make at the end of the day too, about how they treat others. Because I think he even quotes Hemingway in this. There's no true nobility in being better than your fellow man. True nobility is being better than your former self.
Is that when he? I can't remember what was that after a task or something like that. Like where?
No, that's right. That's after all the tests and like the 24 hours before the final test, where like he basically like, hey, come with me and let's get fitted for a suit. And
Okay,
all this kind of stuff. And then Samuel L. Jackson was like, meets them there and basically threatens them to be like, hey, I know where your turf is.
Yeah,
kind of stuff. That was a fantastic moment in the movie too. It's like, hey, I know where your turf is. That was great.
Yeah, Valentine's amazing. Yeah, I do you have anything else?
More?
Yeah.
No, nothing more to add to it. I think this movie is fantastic, and I think we covered it to death.
Well, let's go ahead and rate it then.
Yeah, I'm giving this a solid 9.
You know what? I'm there. I'm right there with you.
Oh yeah,
it's a 9.
That's great. That is great. I love this movie so much more, and I was just like watching it. I was like, I can't remember if I loved it this much or I love it more now.
I don't like it as much, but I think that's just because we've grown. Like this is like a 7-year-old movie at this point, or something close to a 6-year-old movie, and I think, especially as I said, doing this with you, there's been different lenses I'm looking at these movies with. So to be clear, this used to be a 10.
Yes.
In my eyes, this was like a 10, and I think I do think that the ignoring of race, especially if they're trying to push the whole doesn't matter where you come from, anyone can be a gentleman or whatever. It loses a point for me, and I do think that, like,
I agree.
There's stuff like that, and I know we didn't talk on the Swedish thing, which is it is my least favorite thing of James Bond stuff, the way women are treated, and I know that they just wanted to throw that in there.
I agree. That's the misogyny in James Bond is not what I like at all, which is why I'm like,
since they did a good job of avoiding it for most of the movie, and then it's like, I get it. Like, you're like, well, this is a James Bond trope. We got to put it in there. And I guess it's more fun because that woman doesn't end up dead, and that woman is higher status than Eggsy. She's like part of a monarchy of a
princess.
Yeah, like
she's real life princess.
Has more, and they will explore that in the second movie.
Yes,
like how hard it is for him to maintain a relationship with her, but it is a relationship he wants to maintain. So it doesn't feel as bad when you have that context. But it went from like a 10 to a 9 to me, but I really do like the movie. I think it's still fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely right. As we grow older, more things are more important to us and all this kind of stuff. But for me, like, I still love to just disconnect and enjoy this a movie and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're right. It's there are certain things where it's just like, that's weird. If you're going to make that point, why wouldn't you also make the point of bringing up color and race? At least having someone, a BIPOC person at the round table, would have been, good at, like, just some kind of way of being like, okay, you're thinking about this in more ways than one.
But
yeah, Blindside is definitely the right way to describe that aspect.
They have a blind spot on that.
Blind spot on that. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, it's 9s all around. Very fun movie. I do like Matthew Vaughn. I think. I don't know. Probably something will come out after I say that makes me be like, oh, I shouldn't like him. But
fair enough.
For now, I enjoy his movies. Maybe I should just say that. I enjoy his output.
Yeah. We enjoy him until we find out there's something problematic.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I'm not committing to say I like him as a person. I don't know him. What I'm saying is the movies he has put out so far, I enjoy.
Yes.
That is all I'm committing to. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network. That means we are on the same network as great shows like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmares, Whatever Your Theme Song, and more. So please head on over there, listen to those great shows. You can listen to our show as well, thatshelf.com. If you would like to hear older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our Twitter is @TDFSpoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. I might have said that already. The point is, we're on a lot of places. So please go to them if you haven't already. Rate, review, and subscribe. And then share it with your friends. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I said before, tweet at us if, for example, you know more about the proper terminology for that. We certainly would love to be corrected if we are not in the right ballpark at all. We're just trying to do our best, for sure.
Yeah, I apologize for not having that terminology ready to go. I'm not being facetious. I genuinely wish I had that ready to go. But yes, please get in touch with us and let us know, because we want to be better at that type of stuff.
Absolutely.
All right.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.